Okay, Jimena, if you see new attendees that are joining, please go ahead and include them. So again, thank you all for being here. I'm Eduardo Bunge. I'm a professor at Palo Alto University and also the co-founder of Parente AI. Together with Antonio Hardan, Chief of Child Psychiatry at Stanford, we have developed this company to support the delivery of parent-led interventions. And together with us is María Jimena Campos, who's a psychologist in Argentina, who is helping us in this endeavor. So here's the agenda of the day. We're going to talk very briefly about why we should care about parent-led interventions, what are they, and we're going to describe very briefly PMT because it's the most well-known parent-led interventions probably, but we're going to talk about parent-led interventions for autism, for anxiety, and for adolescents with emotional dysregulation using DBT skills. And at the end, we'll have time for questions and comments. But please feel free to interrupt us, unmute yourself and ask questions or send questions over the chat. Jimena, if you see a question in the chat that I do not address, please let me know. So the problem is we all know that there's plenty of individuals suffering mental disorders. To be more specific, there's 1 billion individuals in the world with a mental disorder, and 80% of them receive nothing. And more specifically, in the case of children, there's in US only 30% of households with children have unmet mental health needs. So we need to do something about this population. And we know that parent-led interventions are the most effective treatments for children ages 12 and under. And in some cases, it can augment the treatment of adolescents too, right? Now, we have a big problem here. These interventions work. We have decades of research showing this, but only 5 to 10% of professionals working in the youth and mental health space use or have formal training in parent-led interventions. And actually, in the world, the percentage of therapists that use evidence-based interventions is 7%. So we have plenty of resources that we have shown that work, but most professionals are not using it. So here you have a few examples of parent-led interventions. Parent management training is the one that's the most well-known. It was developed by Alan Kasdin, also in parallel by Russell Barclay. We have anxiety programs such as SPACE or parent-led CBT by Kathy Creswell. We have emotional regulation for teens with more like a DBT program. We have the RUBI for autism. We have pivotal response training to enhance communication with children with autism. And we have the most popular one that is parent-child interaction therapy for younger children, in which parents interact with the child during the session and they get feedback from the therapist. So our goal is to promote and facilitate the delivery of these interventions. We want to make awareness, we want to increase awareness in the field that these interventions should be used more frequently, that instead of seeing the child like once a week and the parents once every 2 months, we should be doing it the other way around. And we also want to facilitate the delivery of these interventions. We created a whole platform that facilitates you how to do these interventions, even if you're not an expert. So we're going to start now describing a few of those. I mentioned PMT is the first one. PMT is basically a structure skills-based intervention. I want to highlight 2 things, structure and skills-based intervention. We therapists, we get the parents in our office and we typically talk about the things that they bring. That is not structure. That is like very spontaneous, very flexible, but we're not delivering skills in a way that is structured, and we're not training the skills so much. We're turning the fire off, but we're not learning to use the skills to prevent those fires. The other thing that's important in this intervention, we teach the parents how to use the evidence-based interventions that are mostly behavioral strategies. And the goal is to improve the child's behavior, but that also helps to improve the family interaction. Yes, and that's has been shown in many research. We've done research ourselves with therapists using Parente, and only 4 sessions of the therapist plus Parente led to significant improvements in the children's behavior, but also in the parental depression, anxiety, and stress, because they're getting along better, right? Okay, here you have the two big manuals that everyone typically knows and start reading when we graduate and we want to start working with children and adolescents. The yellow one by Alan Kasdan and the other one by Russell Barkley. These manuals tend to have plenty of steps and have been tested throughout the years. I'll show a few, just two meta-analyses, that is the summary of many studies all together. This one is from 2008. And in this meta-analysis, the authors show that when you use PMT for everyone as universal prevention or selective prevention or indicated prevention, it works. And when you use it as a treatment for those that have a diagnosis, it works even better. So the improvements are more clear when you have a child with a diagnosis than when you have a child that is well behaved. There's the seeding effect explains that. If you're well behaved, there's little room for you to improve. But if you're having real behavioral problems, there's plenty of room for improvement for you. Now, something that's very interesting, there were meta-analyses showing which components of the treatment work or make a difference. And in this study, what they shown was that when you use positive reinforcements, when you work on the interaction with the parents and the child, when you use emotional communication, and especially when you use timeout, the treatments work better. So if you take time out of the treatment, the effect sizes drop below, get lower, get smaller, right? And I'm just highlighting this because there was all this controversy about timeout. And it's interesting. There's like this negative perception of it that is based on a misunderstanding of what timeout is, because it's something that we grown-ups do with ourselves. When we're upset with something, we take some time out to cool down, and then we come back. It's as simple as that. It's not a punishment. It's not something terrible. It's an opportunity for the child to sit down and calm down. So we're going to go now to the platform so that you see how we facilitate this. And by the way, this is free for you. You can access it. We'll give you the link at the end, but let me show it here. Here you have the Parente platform. This is the home screen where you can go to the programs. And in the programs, if you select parent management training, you will see that we have 15 steps. Why? Barkley has 8 to 9 steps. Kasdan has around 9 steps too. What we did is we combined these two programs so that parents have all the interventions and not just a few of them. And here you have the steps that the treatment follows: introduction and setting the goals, working on psychoeducation, special time to improve the interaction, to improve the relationship, how to praise, how to give effective instructions, how to use rewards. And all these are more positive skills. And then you start having more active ignoring, how to use timeout. Those have to do with the skills to reduce the behavioral problems. And we have here school behavior. We have de-escalation for explosive kids, behavior in public places, how to do effective reprimands. This one is very clearly explained in Alan Kasdan model, but not in Russell Barkley's. Infrequent problem behaviors. What if my child, for example, stole something? How do I deal with that? That's not necessarily explained in the Barkley program, but Russell Barkley has, but Alan Kasdan has a specific way of doing it. Compromising a strategy for resolving conflicts. This is from Kasdan, and understanding and using consequences effectively is also from Kasdan, but of course, Barkley does it. Now, here you can actually go and chat with Pat, and Pat will show you, okay, in this first step, we're going to introduce PMT program. We're going to get to know each other, and we're going to set the goals to ensure that the program is personalized for you. Now, if you're curious and you want to know a little bit better, in the platform, you can chat with Pat, and you can ask Pat, let me do it. Pat, can you tell me what is special time about? Okay, wait, I have an issue with the microphone. I have to check it again. I'm using Zoom, so I have to type. Can you tell me what special time is about? I asked that question. Okay, wait, let me refresh here 1 minute. And I get the response from Pat. Okay. Of course, this you can make it bigger, right? But the point is, you have the option of chatting here and actually doing the conversations yourself, or chatting with Pat and ask Pat about the things that the parents learn with it. So this is just one example of one parent-led intervention. I want to go now back to the slides, and we're going to go to here you have the steps, for example, of PMT on the introduction. So you define the target behaviors, you start establishing the baseline and monitoring, you start using the ABC snapshot, you select one priority goals, and you start using the positive opposite. That is kind of what you typically do in the first step of PMT. That being said, I'm just giving you a quick snapshot of how that one works. I will pass it now to María Jimena so that she explains a little bit about RUBI.
Hi, well, thank you for being there. So RUBI stands for Research Units in Behavioral Intervention, and it's basically a parent training for disruptive behavior in autism. And it's basically aimed to, apart from reducing the child's externalizing behavior, it's also meant to reduce the parenting stress that comes along with all these issues. So there are plenty of evidence that supports this model, this program. One of the main or the most well-known researches is the one from Bears, that it's basically a research that basically the goal was to evaluate the efficacy of parent training for children with autism disorder and disruptive behavior. And what they found was that the parent training worked significantly better, and basically for children with autism and this kind of externalizing behaviors, parent training worked better than just education for parents. So that's kind of the main thing about that's the most important research that was done as regards RUBI. That's why we wanted to share it with you, and that's kind of a brief image of how the program looks like. But can we perhaps go to the playground and show the different modules that RUBI has? Perhaps maybe that can be useful.
Here, and we're going to go to programs.
Okay. So as you can see, I mean, is it okay? As you can see, you will have like the first module is about behavioral principles, and basically it's about teaching the parent about ABC, right? The basics like antecedent behavior consequence. Then they move on to working with prevention strategies. Then the step number 3, it's about daily schedules. Then they work specifically on reinforcement, and there are 2 modules on that. That's this. Each step that you are like you're seeing now is one session that the protocol for RUBI addresses, right? So apart from the 2 steps, the step 4 and step 5 that are reinforcement training for parents, they also worked on plan ignoring. They also worked on compliance training, on functional communication training, which is really helpful for this kind of children who are experiencing these symptoms. They also worked on step number 9, which is teaching skills, the first part, and there is a second part as well of teaching skills. And then the last step is generalization and maintenance, basically how to keep it going. What Pat does is work on these steps. The parent goes one by one at their own rhythm. It's not necessary to be like for it to be once a week or anything. They go at their own rhythm, but each module has its own homework. So the kid and the family works on the homework for each of the modules that they do. And then in the following module, what Pat does is first it like goes through the homework, like, okay, were you able to use this strategy? Were you able to do this and that? And then they like teach the parent the, for example, prevention strategies, right? But first they review the homework from the previous model. That's how it's not just separate things. It's just like a whole program that builds from the previous one. It's built from the previous one, so to say.
Jimena, while you were talking, I asked a question on what is functional communication training, which is
right. That's a good question.
Right. And here we have the response from, sorry, let me go here, from Pat, right? We can show it in the slides. We have it in the slides. But what we're trying to show is that this platform allows us to get all the questions that we have from Pat.
Exactly.
So actually, let me go back to the slides here. And here you have, this is a better explanation of functional communication training. Do you want to share it?
Yeah, sure, of course. So what we have here is first, I mean, this is for functional communication training. What it does, what PAD does is first it identifies the target behavior to replace. Then they clarify the function or why this behavior is happening. And then, for example, I mean, we're talking about a child that perhaps does a tantrum, for example, right? Like that could be a behavior to replace because he doesn't like something. So basically what they do, what Pat does is, okay, after having clarified the function, or why is it happening, then they select a replacement communication response matched to that function. That is like instead of that behavior, something else. It could be anything. Pat specifically works with the context of each family. So the replacement communication response will be specific to each family. But then they operationalize the new communication behavior. Like, okay, what will be considered, for example, let's say it goes with, okay, we're going to replace it with raising hand, right? Raising the hand. So, okay, Pat will help the family try to personalize that new communication behavior, which is like raising their hand, the child raising their hand. And then they will plan the teaching procedure, basically how you will prompt and shape that new behavior with, I mean, your child, how you will teach that to your child. Then they plan the reinforcement strategy, how they will reinforce that behavior, especially when it's just at the beginning, at the end as well, and throughout the whole process, of course. But we're talking about early stages are basically key for that behavior to continue. And they also help to create a routine specific plan, like how to implement that plan that they have thought of, and they give a homework, like something to practice. I mean, during the week or during those days, because like we talked about, it's not just one session a week. It could be the parents can talk with Pat and can work through those modules whenever they feel like it. So basically, that's how that works.
Thank you. Just to put it more in the words of like a parent and a child, here is the conversation that Pat delivers to the parents, right? First is ask about how's the week going, whether they practice the skills or not. And then it gets into, okay, great, let's talk about functional communication training. The idea behind FCT is that challenging behaviors like tantrums, refusals, or aggressions are often your child's way of communicating a need or want. With FCT, we teach a more appropriate way for Tommy to get the same need met, like using a word gesture, or picture instead of the challenging behavior. If you're in the world of autism, this is like very basic, right? But not every professional out there knows these type of things. So while having this type of support, you can deliver these skills more appropriately to the parents. Here, Pat has an example. If a child throws things to get out of a task, we may teach them to hand over a break card or say all done instead. The key is that the new communication needs to work just as well or better than the old behavior. And then it asks, okay, do you feel like is there a specific behavior that you want to start replacing with FCT, blah, blah, blah. And then the conversation continues, just to give an example. So thank you, Jimena. Let's go back to the slides here. What we have now is the anxiety program. Personally, I love this one. And here we have two evidence-based programs for anxiety. One is the SPACE, based on the work from Ellie Leibowitz. And that one focuses on reducing family accommodation. We'll share what's that in a minute. And the other one is Parent-Led CBT for Anxious Children by Kathy Creswell, this one over here. So this one is more CBT standard, CBT style, for example, obviously, and it promotes flexible thinking, it promotes exposure, yes? So one works mostly on teaching the child specific skills, and the other one is teaching the parents to stop accommodating to the child's anxiety. To give a little bit overview of the science behind SPACE, we have studies that were done. This was a non-inferiority study. Basically, they were showing that if you teach the skills to the child, like coping cat, CBT for a child, or you work just with the parents, this is non-inferior to working with the child. So now we have several alternatives. We can work with the child, we can work with the parents, we can work with both. But human therapies have a limitation of time, right? So we need to focus on one. So maybe we can start working with the child, but also provide this to the parents as an adjunct through the platform, right? Or you can work with the parents using the platform and have a more powerful treatment than if you were delivering it by yourself. Now, just to give some idea on SPACE, SPACE has, if I recall correctly, somewhere around 10 to 12 steps, if I recall correctly the number, and CBT, Parent-Led CBT has like 7 steps, right? What we did is we combine everything so that parents get not just one, but all the skills that they need. Because sometimes with one program is not sufficient and you want to give them as much as possible. So if you think on SPACE, what you have here is the welcome and what to expect, understanding child anxiety, which is mostly psychoeducation, getting ready, understanding family accommodation, selecting the target problem, informing your child that you're going to stop accommodating to those behaviors, start implementing the plan, keep implementing the plan, expanding the plan, reviewing accommodation, increase parental cooperation. Sometimes one parent is more comforting the child and the other one is more demanding, go and do it. And the idea is to incorporate both styles and to have parents being more in the same page. And then you have the ones on finding supporters, helping your child be more independent. This is more from the Parent-Led CBT, promoting flexible thinking, helping your child face your fears. This is exposure, like basic, and the wrap-up, right? So what we did is we tried to combine everything so that parents get more support from the therapist. To give a very quick idea on SPACE, because it's less known than CBT, SPACE focuses on reducing family accommodation. And in the step 3, that is understanding child anxiety, basically it explains to the parents what is anxiety, how it develops, and how parents' anxieties and behaviors can help to promote the anxiety without wanting to do it. And intentionally, by comforting my child and not allowing them to face their fears and preventing them to gain confidence, for example, right? Or sometimes if I get very anxious and I tell them, go and do it, and I'm not empathic at all, although I'm promoting the exposure, I am doing it in a way that actually makes them feel more anxious. So these type of things maintain the anxiety, right? And explaining to the parents that whenever your child avoid, something that they fear that maintains the anxiety. So what we teach the parents is that they need to be more supportive. And supportive means to include statements that are comforting, but that also that increase facing the fears, right? What typically happens is one parent says, oh, Johnny, come here, you're so afraid, sleep with me, right? So that you're not anxious, so that you don't feel that bad. And the other parent tends to say, come on, it's nothing, go and do it, which is kind of exposure, but in a very wild and kind of sudden manner, right? So we want the parents to be able to first communicate supportive statement to the parents. I see that you're feeling scared. I see that you think that you cannot sleep alone. At the same time, I know that if you spend time in your bed during the whole night, that you're going to be fine. We don't use the but, right? And what you're communicating is validation, but also confidence that they can do it. And after doing that, parents need to stop accommodating, need to stop going and checking the child every single minute, right? You will do this in a gradual manner, but this is something that you need to teach the parents. And one analogy that they use a lot is the analogy of that child that falls in a wheel, right, in a very deep hole, right, in the middle of nowhere. If you as a parent jump to the hole with the child, you're not helping them, right? At some point, you as a parent need to go and find help. That means leaving your child there. It feels horrible, right? But you're doing that because you know that that's what will save his life, right? With anxiety, something similar happens. Your child might cry while you don't accommodate, but you're going to do this because you know that that's what will increase their confidence. That is what will make them realize that they can go to a birthday party, that they can sleep by themselves, right? Now, if you get in the bed with them, is as jumping to the wheel and staying with them, right? So this is kind of a little bit of the spirit on space. That being said, I'll pass it along to Jimena on the DBT.
Okay, so DBTA is basically dialectic behavioral therapy for adolescents, and that is based on the protocol or the manual of Rogers and Miller that was also done according to the DBT manual for adults based on Marshall Inningham's work, basically. So basically, what is DBT? DBT for teens is a parent skills program that teaches parents the manual itself or the protocol as it is. Those skills are taught both to parents and teens, right? They do it's called multi-family group, and basically within the group they're taught those skills. Now the problem is that not everyone has access to that to a group where DBT skills are taught. So what basically we did was we trained Pat so that he can deliver or train the parents in the DBT skills, right? So what the DBT skills have proven is that they reduce both the teen and the family's dysregulation. The skills that are taught are mindfulness, validation, distress tolerance, emotion regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness. And families have more stability and fewer high intensity conflicts when they do this protocol, this training, this program, right? So basically, there are two basic researches that are one of the most important, but there are a whole bunch. You can take a look at all those in the it's published, they're published, so you can look them up if you want to. Basically the researchers have proved that that treatment, the DBTA treatment, is effective and it reduces stress within the family. It also reduces the suicidal behavior. It reduces basically all the main symptoms that are associated with those kind of so self-harming behavior. People who suffer from that have benefited from doing the DBT therapy, specifically in adolescents. That's basically what the research is saying. If
Jimena,
we go to the play, say
sorry,
yes.
thank you. I jumped to the playground a little bit sooner
Okay,
than I
no
was.
worries.
Sorry about that. So here you have the modules.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So those are the modules. You can see that we talked about ordered in first. You can see that there are the emotion regulation skills.
Jimena,
You can see that.
Jimena,
Yes,
sorry, your connection
sorry.
is a little bit choppy.
Yes.
Let me take it for a few minutes to see if I
Okay.
can. Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
So
of
sorry
course.
about that. Yeah. So here you have, as you can see, there are 30 steps in this manual. This is something that no human being can remember 30 steps, and no human being can remember the 10 steps that are in every one of these 30 modules. So that is almost like 300 steps that you need to remember. If we try to do this as humans, we kind of sometimes miss many things. So the goal of Parente and here chatting with Pat is that Pat can help us ensure that we deliver all the content that is needed. So here we have the first set of modules that have to do with emotional regulation, that is understanding intense emotions, the mind states, the rational mind, the emotional mind, and the wise mind. Then we have what is mindfulness and how to do it, distress tolerance, introduction, distress tolerance, comfort, and senses is this skill of which are the five senses and what can you provide to each of those senses to feel better when you are under distress. You have improving the moment, you have survive a crisis with pros and cons, the tip skills, crisis survival skills. Then we have radical acceptance, ways of accepting reality, dialectics, what and how to know, thinking errors, understanding dialectical dilemmas, validation. For some reason, the steps are listed 2 times here. Behavioral change introduction, behavioral change continuation, emotional regulation, adding positive emotions. All these are following the treatment protocol, and we want to help the therapist promoting these skills. Surfing emotions, opposite action. I love this one, opposite action. Interpersonal effectiveness, give skills, dear man, fast, request and deny, more peace, less conflicts. So here you have like plenty of modules that you can ask the parents to go ahead and do them, and you can discuss them with them, and you will know that at least they will go through all the content with that. Let me go back to the slides here. Jimena, do you want to try if you're
Am I making more sense now that it
yes,
has it improved? Okay, good.
your
Uh,
connection needed a break.
Yeah, maybe. That's understandable. So basically, you've seen the modules, and now you see that, for example, this is an example of how the mind states work. And you see that first it explains the purpose or why it's important to work on this module. It defines and it gives a definition of the three mindsets: rational, wise mind, emotional. And it gives examples of, or it helps the parent how recognize which is each mind using examples that they have provided or that they can provide. And basically, Pat interacts with them and it helps them identify the different emotions. Okay, in this situation, we're in rational mind, emotional mind, and so on. It's interactive, so that's a good way of helping the parent recognize that. Then it teaches 2 or 3 ways to access the wise mind. the small skills that the parent can try to access the wise mind. And basically, then it helps the parent identify how they can apply that to a wise mind parenting stance. And it gives them homework. As a homework, they have to practice basically using the wise mind or identifying and recognizing when the parent is in each state of mind. And then it troubleshoots and it wraps up the module with questions or whatever the parent will need. So basically, that's kind of an overview.
Thank you. I think this is a little bit all what we have in terms of presentation. A few things to keep in mind. This I will share this platform here, which is a platform for professionals where you can see all the clients. This is, of course, demo data. I'm not showing any real client, but you have all the clients. You can check their profiles and learn more about which programs they've done, what chats they had with Pat, etc. But you can also talk with Pat here and ask them about specific clients. And you can say, can you give me a summary of Leah Marlowe conversations from last week? And it will give you the summary of what happened during the week. And why this is important, this has to do with the following. We professionals provide therapy 50 minutes a week, right? And we know nothing on what happens during the week, and parents don't get any support. So what we're doing in this case is we are allowing parents to continue learning during the week or without waiting until the next session. We allow them to have in-the-moment support. We send them reminders, and then we therapists, we get a notification on what happened during the week. Like we have like a summary. You will see it in a minute here. Pat is pulling all the information. And once you get that information, when you show up to the session, you are you're more prepared than if you knew nothing. But also parents are at a better position because they progress, because they solve problems right when they happen. So treatment can go faster. Why? By working together. So here you have like a quick summary. You can send messages to the clients, etc. But let me go back to the slides. Here, I want to add a visual to what I just mentioned. This is traditional therapy today. This is what we achieve by working together as a team with Parente, right? You have your sessions, but they continue learning. They get in-the-moment support. They get reminders. And you as a therapist get all this information and you provide a better session at the following. That being said, let's open it to questions and I will stop sharing. Any questions, comments? Katia, I saw that you were one of the brave ones that was able to unmute yourself. Do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah. I'm curious about the accessibility of Parente, like the cost for clients, if any, and if not, like how you're able to fund it.
Okay, I can share that in a minute, in a second. For the professionals, it's free. So you create an account and you can start using it. And parents pay a monthly subscription of $25 a month. And they have a 10 days free trial that they can test it and see it. But we typically suggest that this is used in combination with a professional, not as a standalone intervention. They can do it as a standalone intervention, but it's like giving someone a subscription to a gym versus having a coach that tells you, hey, do this, do that. The accountability that adds having a human professional in the loop, it makes a big, big difference on how parents use it.
Got it. And what is the, like, how easy is it for parents usually to learn to navigate the program? Or I guess maybe there's some assistance from the professional when they first start it, but yeah.
It is super easy. I didn't mention this, right? I should have. But what you're seeing here in the playground, this is the app as the parents see it. and we explain them. Here you have the programs. The programs have structured support that will guide you week by week, right? And these are conversations in which Pat, the agent, will guide you. And by the way, you can have these conversations by text, or you can click here and do it through voice. I will not do it now, but that's what you can do it, right? And you have, again, you have the programs and you have the in-the-moment support. If I click here in chat with Pat, what Pat will ask me is, what can I help you today? So here I talk about whatever I want, as long as it is related to parenting. In the programs, Pat is the one that's guiding the conversation. Yes. Now, important. What we typically suggest is that professionals, when they invite a parent, that they do this in the session with them. That they tell them, okay, go to, let's say, for example, that they want to do the PMT, right? Go to the introduction, click here, and start chatting with Pat, so that you'll see that, okay, here, Pat has these goals in mind. So that conversation will lead to that. So, okay, tell me a little bit about your child. My child is Tommy, he's 6. Okay, now tell me a little bit more if you want, right? Okay, just to make sure I have it right. Okay, thank you for letting me know. What you're showing here is that here is a conversation that is led by the AI. Versus now, let's go to one in-the-moment support and have a conversation where basically you decided, by the way, okay, let me go here. Click new chat with Pat. Here, this is a conversation where you can ask, my child is from Libra. Does this explain his bad behavior? What do you think that Pat will say in this case? Technically, it should say, I know nothing about the horoscope. I can tell you from a behavioral perspective, this is what we think, right? But scientifically, a child being on Libra doesn't have a blah, blah, blah. So we train Pat to first provide responses that have only to do with scientifically supported material, and not to give diagnosis, not to give indications about medication. And if I say something that is problematic as a professional, I will get a notification that my client is saying something problematic. So to your question on how easy it is to navigate it, it's pretty easy. But if you're in the mental health space, you will probably know that to promote a behavior is good to scaffold that behavior initially, and then they can continue doing it by themselves.
Absolutely. Okay, that was super helpful. I don't want to take too much time for questions, but I'll ask one last thing. I'm really curious to explore the program more, but I'm not yet a professional. I'm starting my doctorate in the fall, actually. So I was curious if there's any sort of Cal or Wright Institute.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, got it.
Yes. So I'm not sure if there's an access code or any way you would allow me to explore it a little bit. I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll share with you a link. Give me 1 minute.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll leave it at that for now.
Any other questions from the audience? No? Well, I think we're good to go. I will stop the recording, and Katia, I will send you now the link. Give me 1 minute.
Thank you so much.